Again, my name is Jayantha, which is a Pali name given to me um, when I took the 8 lifetime precepts. That doesn't mean anything other than an extended version of the 5 precepts. I am a 36-year-old lay Buddhist disciple of the Theravada tradition, meaning that I'm not a monk, I'm not a master, guru, or anything like that. I've been on staff here at the Buddha Center for 2 years, do a couple of different things, including a Basics of Buddhism class, metta meditation around this time on Thursday, and usually Dhamma readings on Sunday night. So here, what we do is technically called the Dhamma talk, and in ways that if you're familiar with listening to Dhamma talks from monks or lay teachers, um, there's often a period of time where the person talks, and then questions are held off until the end, and then after the person talks, there's like a question and answer period. Um, since I'm not a monk and I like to have a little bit more of a discussion, anytime I'm yapping on, however long I am yapping on, if you have any questions or comments or anything, feel free to make them. You're not interrupting me in any way. I like to have a discussion, and I like to get everybody's input on the topics that we talk about. So, as one of the things, I guess I wanted to do a topic that I haven't really done before, um, and I guess it's kind of related. Uh, some of you may know, probably not. I see a lot of new people, but I'm actually going into the monastery in about 2 months, and hopefully going to be accepted and going through the process of becoming a monk. And I wanted to talk today a little bit about kind of a wide topic, um, about teachers in Buddhism, uh, having a teacher on the path, about the community, Sangha. Um, so it's kind of, I guess I'm going to kind of go a little bit here and there. Um, but if you're like me, a Westerner, uh, you probably don't have a daily or a very close Sangha, a very close community of practitioners. And you might be just starting out. You might be learning about Buddhism and meditation or whatever practices that you do over the internet. Um, and it's very common these days. This is how I have progressed in my practice over the last 5 years. I've been meditating for about 10, but didn't really kind of come into my own practice until about the last 5. And I've never really had a teacher that I could talk to, on a daily basis and that kind of stuff. So most of us don't have that. But and it's interesting. A lot of the people the monks that I consider to be my teachers, also didn't really do that. They kind of taught themselves, which is interesting. But the what I wanted to kind of stress is what the Buddha set up the community and why he set it up, how he set it up. So you might have heard the term Sangha, Sangha. Um, it's a term that basically means community. It's often used for the monks. The term for the monks, male monastics, is bhikkhu. The term for the female monastics is bhikkhuni. So there's the bhikkhu sangha and the bhikkhuni sangha, and that's the order of the monks. Then in modern times, and in the West, Sangha has taken up a more general term, meaning community. We here at the Buddha Center are all a Sangha together. And the Buddha set up what he called the fourfold assembly. And the Fourfold Assembly was the community of practitioners that he wanted to have in place before his death. And he did have this community in place. The Fourfold Assembly are male and female um, renunciates, the bhikkhus and the bhikkhunis, and male and female lay disciples. So he set up this this Fourfold Assembly as a way to propagate the Dhamma, to keep the Dhamma alive over the centuries to come, and to have that Dhamma there for those who would like to learn from it and to practice it. And the Buddha as an awakened being had very deep insights into human nature, and he understood that there were people at different levels of understanding, at different levels of the path. And so no matter what your level of the path, if you wanted to practice, there was a place for you in this Fourfold Assembly. You know, if you read the suttas or the sutras, you might you have to see that a lot of what he says in there, a lot of who he's talking to, are the monks. And as a layperson, who is not going as far as to become a monk, some of what he says is not necessarily applicable to you in your practice. There are many suttas where he actually speaks directly to laypersons and to talking about the proper attitude, the proper way that monks behave, and the proper way that lay people behave. So in the beginning, I should say, the way Buddhism has changed and evolved 2,500 years later, it's very, the Fourfold Assembly is still there. But depending on culture and the transmission of the Dhamma and the teachings throughout various countries and various times and places, things have changed. Now, there were lay teachers at the time of the Buddha, but it was something that was a little bit more rare than it is today. There are many traditions. I'm a Theravadan, so I can't claim to have a lot of knowledge of other schools, but I'll say that today, in other schools, in some schools, the lay teacher is somebody who is on par with the monastics, or the lay teacher is somebody you're going to find more of than a monastic. And in other traditions, the far majority of the teachers are monastics. But in the time of the Buddha, there were at least one or two named lay teachers who actually taught monks. It was interesting. I have always had a lot of respect for the monks, and that kind of led me to I don't know what the word, I guess a bias towards the teachings of monks, as opposed to lay people. And being in Theravada, there's very, very few lay teachers. One of the biggest, most famous ones would be S.N. Goenka, and there's a few local lay teachers in countries. But in Theravada, it's really not as big as in other traditions. And so, for me, as somebody who's always keeping an open mind and willing to change. It's been interesting how over the last year or two, I've found lay teachers who who I put to the test. I listened to what they were talking about. I watched their videos, and I said, "Wow, this person knows what they're talking about. This is an interesting." And so I have grown in that way. One of my favorite lay teachers is a Noah Levine. I don't know if you know who that is, but this is a he started a he made a book called Dharma Punks, and he was a punk, like a punk rocker, and he did a lot of as a youth he was in jail and he did all kinds of things, and he came to the Dhamma, and he's been a lay teacher for the last 25 years. And it's interesting, here's this bald-headed, tattooed-up guy, and you look at him, he's a Dhamma teacher? But then when you hear what he's talking about, it's like, yeah, he is a Dhamma teacher. He knows what he's talking about. And so it's amazing where you can get that insight and that wisdom from, if you keep an open mind. So for me, as a practitioner, like I said, where I intend to renounce is actually 5 hours from where I live. I've been going there the last 2 years, basically on average about once every other month for either a 4-day weekend or personal retreat or a full retreat. And they've come to know me there, and I've developed a good practice from just that little amount of time being, going to this place to learn, not only from the monks, but from the other practitioners and from my own experiences there. So it's been, obviously something important enough that I would want to move towards renouncing and becoming a monk. Now, this is a practice that has, as I've progressed in my practice, and like I said in the beginning, I'm certainly no master meditator, not in the least. But the insights that I have gained, um, from the people I've learned from, uh, mostly on the internet, which is, it's still interesting how Dhamma is evolving, um, to modern times. And it's interesting how Buddhism, that you would think that these old monks, like how would they would be kind of not into doing these kind of things, being on the internet. But all the monks I've ever spoken with, they say this is a wonderful tool. I mean, look at where we are right now. We're on the internet, aren't we? We're in this virtual space, this second life. And I would venture to say that my practice wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for the Buddha Center here on Second Life. To be able to have, in the absence of a personal in-person Sangha that we live close to be able to have the Fourfold Assembly here, and we do have the Fourfold Assembly in the Buddha Center. We have monks and we have lay persons. I don't think we have any female monastics. So we almost have we need one. So if you know any female monastics that would like to come on and teach, we could definitely use the female monastic to complete our Fourfold Assembly. So I guess at this point, is there anybody who has a teacher, who's lucky enough to have a teacher that they're able to communicate with, learn from, talk about your practice with? Anybody? So we're all in the same boat, aren't we? Yeah, good. Good. See, the interesting thing about having a teacher um, is that if you know the suttas, if you know what the Buddha taught, even having a teacher, our liberation, our happiness, our advancement on the path is still up to us. The Buddha said that the awakened ones, the Buddhas, the Arahants, they cannot bring you to awakening. They can only point the way. And teachers are the same. Teachers can't bring you to awakening. They can only point the way. They can point the way. They can give you a different perspective, right? Because the only thing that we really know is our own perspective, our own experience. And so sometimes a teacher can, we're going down one path, and they can be the ones that, like on the train tracks, right? You pull the lever and you go a different way. They can be the one that just gives you that little nudge to go a different way, hopefully towards, a better place of your practice, and advancement of your practice, and peace and all of that. So if you, I would say it's always best if we can have a teacher in our daily lives. But if we can't, then there's no reason that we can't practice. There's no reason that we can't learn. There's no reason that we cannot advance and gain peace, insight on our own. The Buddha said that if you cannot have a wise friend, a Dhamma friend, then better to go it alone. Better to do it by yourself. But if you can have a wise friend, they call a Kalyanamitta, a wise friend, a good friend, a friend in the Dhamma. If you can have that person, that teacher, or even an equal to yourself, somebody who is on the same path, then the benefits are great. And so when I say my teachers, those who I consider my teachers, some of my teachers that I consider my teachers, I've never even met. I consider them my teachers because I have been able to listen to their Dhamma talks, right? I haven't been able to speak to them in person, but the insight that I've gained in practicing what I have learned is enough for me to consider them my teacher. One of the biggest teachers, and I really credit this monk with me being where I am today, is Ajahn Brahm. He's pretty famous. A lot of people know him. But as somebody who was a meditator, I've been a meditator for 10 years. And the first 5 years of my meditation were very hard, very negative. Because I didn't learn the mindset behind the meditation, which to me is the most important. I followed the directions of what I was able to gather and to learn. But following the directions didn't quite work for me. And because I couldn't follow the directions, I developed negativity, and I developed really a judgmental attitude towards myself. And just listening to Ajahn Brahm's Dhamma talks, I started to learn how to be kind to myself and to let go. And here I am 5 years later. So never underestimate the importance of the Dhamma on the internet. And there are many whole channels. One that comes to my mind, DhammaTube, has somewheres around 1,000 plus videos from a couple hundred different monastics and lay teachers. Now this is, a place for you to learn from. And no matter what, the great thing about the internet also is, no matter what tradition, you can find teachings. And the like I said, the monastics and lay teachers uh, have really understood the importance and the ability of the internet to spread the Dhamma. And like the monastery Bhavana Society in West Virginia, it's a forest monastery that I'm going to hopefully ordain in, is actually making plans to move from what is a basic website with words, just to explaining about what they do and all that, to a full-fledged, fully interactive educational website with videos, Dhamma talks, all of these kind of things. And this is something that's in the works. And this is something that I applaud because, I'm 36 years old. I'm not necessarily young, but I am a child of the beginning. I'm a child of the internet, right? The internet was around when I was about 17, 18, somewhere around. At where I'm the monastery. That's the website. Like I said, this is something that's in planning. It's not up there yet, but and this is something that I've also seen in different traditions. I think caught on to this a little bit earlier, like Zen and Tibetan and stuff like that. I've seen these kind of things more in those traditions, which is good. Um, the any way that you can learn the Dhamma from is important because the Buddha taught about how um, how you actually do the practice, right? To want to put effort into doing this practice, which is a hard practice, meditation, living skillfully, all of these things are not easy. The Buddha said that all of this practice is going against the stream. Everybody else is going that way, and you're pushing the other way in your practice. So it's very hard. And um, to be able to do this practice, you need this support. You need this this guidance to help you along. And that's why being able to go on the internet and with the click of a mouse see these teachings is very important. Very important. And that's the importance of, and another, I guess, moving it along a little bit, changing to a different bent. I've also come to the point of understanding a little bit more about the importance of community in the practice. As in the beginning, all I wanted to do, and even still a lot to the extent today, all I wanted to do was just go in the woods by myself and meditate. Even when I started going to Bhavana Society 2 years ago, my first retreat, it was you're meditating for an hour or 2 hours, whatever, in the meditation hall with 30 other people, and I just I had a negativity towards that. I wanted to go out in the woods by myself and meditate. And the monastic Bhante Silananda, who along with Bhante G and Bhante Dhamma, those are the monastics at Bhavana Society. I spoke to him, and he says, when you are here for a retreat, you should be with the retreatants. And back then I kind of didn't understand it. I was like, ugh. It's all stuffy and inside, and I don't like inside. I'd rather just... Didn't the Buddha say to go under a tree or something? So I was like, yeah, but, now it's interesting that the way, and going back to the beginning, the fourfold assembly, right? The way it was set up was that originally in the Buddha's time and in some traditions today, monks are completely and utterly and totally dependent on the lay people. If you're familiar with history at all, you kind of know maybe about the Middle Ages in Europe. Excuse me. You know about the monasteries, the Catholic monasteries, who became very rich and powerful, and they had their own lands, and they created their own farms, and they were kind of separate and above the people. Well, the Buddha, you know, insightful as he is, 15, well, actually, what am I talking about? Yeah, about 15 to almost 2,000 years before that, he sets these rules, so that the monks are totally dependent on the lay people. The monks, when I become a monk, hopefully, um, I will not be able to touch money. I will not be able to take any food that's not given to me. All of these rules, so that the monks are totally dependent on lay people for survival. And it was set up this way so that the monks, the lay people, provide the requisites for the monks, and the requisites being shelter, food, clothing, and medicines. So the lay people provide that for the monks, food for the body, shelter for the body, all of these things. And the monks provide food for the mind. They provide the teachings. They keep the teachings alive. And so that's how it was set up back then. And for the most part, that is how it is now. But with the emergence of secular Buddhism and different things, and the way Buddhism has changed over time and distance, it's not quite fully that in all traditions. Um, there are traditions now where monks can farm, like in China and stuff like that, because as Buddhism went from place to place, um, the demands of living in that place and the culture and all that has changed the monastic rules. So that's why there's a wide variety of minor changes between the different monks of different traditions. But for the most part, the core discipline, the Vinaya, is there. So I suppose my rambling kind of here and there talk on the importance of Sangha and a little bit of history of the monks and lay teachers and all of that. Um, I suppose that's about it. If there's anybody that has any comments or questions or anything they'd like to discuss, you can bring that to the fore now. Um, Other than that, I think we can end unless I think of anything else. But does anybody have a community that they travel to? Even, like an hour away, you travel to somewhere every once in a while. Or if you have a website or a specific teacher that you'd like, for the rest of the community to know, you can definitely post that here, so that we spread. I try to, being a Theravadan, I um, mostly listen and mostly watch videos related to Theravada, but I also like to, keep an open mind and watch videos from monastics and lay teachers of different traditions. And I think that's important as well. I think I did, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, I did a talk on kind of finding your path, um, you know, the different traditions and finding a path versus not having a path and all these kind of things. So, okay then. So, we don't have any comments or questions, so we can end here. Thank you all for coming and listening to me yap on for a half hour. Um, I wish your practice well. I always end with Metta, which is jewelheart.org. And what's that website? What is contained in that website?